The old pickup coughed once, then died with a long, defeated hiss, its final exhale echoing across the empty Wyoming highway. Dust settled slowly around the rust-patched hood, and the silence that followed was absolute. Cole Granger sat behind the wheel, jaw clenched, hand still gripping the key like he could will the engine back to life. But the truck had given up, just like everything else. He looked out the cracked windshield at what had to be the saddest excuse for a gas station in the western United States. The sign read, "Granger's Service," barely legible beneath layers of sun-bleached paint and bird droppings. The building sagged like it was too tired to stand, and the fuel pumps hadn't seen a drop of gasoline since cell phones had buttons. But it was his now, everything his father had left behind. Cole exhaled, the air dry in his lungs. Hell of a legacy, old man. From the passenger seat, a pair of sharp, amber eyes watched the crumbling scene without blinking. Ranger, a weathered Belgian Malinois with grizzled fur and a soldier's stillness, sat perfectly upright. His ears were alert, his gaze locked on the cracked concrete just ahead of the front bumper. Cole followed the dog's line of sight. "What's so fascinating down there, huh?" he muttered. Ranger didn't move, didn't even blink. It wasn't curiosity. It was focus. That kind of focus didn't come from a house pet. That came from training. Missions. Muscle memory burned in with repetition and command. Cole rubbed his face. He didn't want a dog, especially not his father's, especially not now. But according to the will, the old man hadn't left him much choice. The property came with the dog. No exceptions. He reached for the door handle and paused. Ranger was still staring at the ground, unmoving, watching. Cole muttered a curse and pushed open the door. The dry wind slapped him in the face. His boots crunched against sun-baked gravel as he rounded the truck. He didn't bother grabbing his bag. There was no rush, no one waiting. As he approached the entrance to the station, the memories clawed up like dust off the floorboards. He hadn't been here since high school, not since the blowout fight with his father that ended in fists and silence. The place hadn't changed, just fallen further into ruin. The key from the lawyer's envelope clicked in the lock with a surprising smoothness. Cole pushed the door open and stepped inside. It smelled like dry paper and something dead. He didn't flinch. Ranger padded in behind him, silent as a shadow. The interior was coated in a thick layer of dust, furniture draped in yellowed sheets, shelves still lined with faded cans of motor oil and hard candy no sane person would eat. A small, closed-off hallway led to the back office and the stairwell to the apartment upstairs. Cole crossed to the counter, trailing a finger through the dust. "Welcome home," he muttered bitterly. Ranger moved past him, nose twitching. He walked a slow arc around the room, then stopped. His body stiffened. Cole turned. "What is it now?" The dog let out a low huff, not a bark, not a growl. A breath. He pawed once at the floor behind the register. Then again. Same spot. Cole frowned. "There's nothing there, buddy." But Ranger didn't stop. His movements were measured, not frantic, controlled, like he was working a search pattern. And that's when it hit Cole. He wasn't just watching a dog dig. He was watching a trained K9 marker find. "Hell," Cole whispered, crouching down. He pushed aside the decaying welcome mat and ran his fingers over the tile beneath. One of the squares was slightly raised. Off color. He tapped it. Hollow. Ranger stepped back, giving him space. Cole hesitated, then pried it loose with the corner of a wrench he found under the counter. Beneath the tile was a steel lid. No handle. Just a recessed groove and a keyhole that didn't match anything he had. He looked at the dog. "You want to tell me what the hell this is?" Ranger stared back, unmoving. Cole backed off. He wasn't drunk enough to start imagining dogs giving him answers. Not yet. The upstairs apartment was as lifeless as the store below. He pulled a sheet off the couch, kicked open the stuck window to let in some air, and dropped his duffel on the floor. He poured himself a drink. Nothing fancy, just enough to shut his brain up. Outside, the sun was disappearing behind the ridgeline. Inside, Ranger curled up by the door, his head on his paws, but his eyes stayed open. Watching, like he was still on duty. 2 days earlier, Cole had stood in a lawyer's office in Casper, dressed in the same jeans and faded tee he wore now. His siblings, crisp in tailored suits, had barely looked at him. The will had read like a punchline. They got trusts, property, company shares. He got a shack and a dog. To my son Cole, the lawyer had read aloud, I leave the service station in Snake Valley, along with my companion Ranger. May you find purpose there. The room had gone silent except for his brother's scoff. Cole didn't respond. Not then. Not when they offered to buy him out. Not when they laughed. He had signed the papers and walked out. He hadn't spoken a word, because he didn't have any left to give. That night, in the apartment above the gas station, Cole woke from a dream he didn't remember, drenched in sweat, the taste of sand and blood still in his mouth. He sat up, breathing hard. Ranger was awake, watching him. Not startled, not alarmed, just waiting. Like he'd done this before. Cole wiped his face and stood. He walked to the kitchen, poured himself another drink, and stopped. The bottle was where he'd left it, but Ranger was sitting in front of it, not growling, not blocking, just sitting. Still, present. Cole stared at him. Move. Ranger didn't blink. Cole tried to sidestep him. Ranger mirrored the motion. Silent, steady, unflinching. Cole dropped his hand, stepped back, sat on the floor. You're not just some mutt, are you? He said softly. Ranger lay down beside him. His head brushed against Cole's shoulder. Cole didn't move, didn't speak. Outside, the wind howled across the plains. Inside, for the first time in months, the bottle stayed sealed. And Ranger never looked away from the hidden panel beneath the floor. The nights in Snake Valley were silent in a way that made your skin crawl. Not peaceful. Dead. No crickets, no passing cars, just the occasional creak of the warped wooden beams overhead and the distant cry of coyotes. Cole had learned to sleep in war zones, but this kind of silence, it crawled under his ribs like something waiting to surface. The apartment above the gas station was barely livable. A rust-stained sink, a mattress that smelled like old sweat and mildew, and a cracked ceiling fan that groaned louder than it spun. But it was 4 walls and a roof. Cole had slept in worse. He'd brought in just the essentials, his duffel bag, a rusted toolbox, and the few photographs he hadn't torched in the bottom of a bottle. Ranger had claimed the corner by the window, close enough to see everything, far enough not to invite touch. The dog watched him like a field medic watching a wounded man refusing treatment. No tail wags, no begging, just eyes, sharp, unreadable, patient. Cole didn't know how long the dog had served, didn't even know if he'd officially been deployed. But he could tell Ranger had seen war. Or worse. He moved like a shadow, stood like a statue, and reacted to the slightest sound with deadly clarity. One morning, Cole found him staring at the old supply room behind the store. The room hadn't been touched in years. Shelves lined with ancient cans of brake fluid and expired snacks. A cobwebbed Pepsi fridge hummed weakly in the corner. The place reeked of oil and dead mice. You want something in there? Cole asked, voice groggy from too little sleep and too many dreams. Ranger didn't move. Cole opened the door. The dog stepped inside, nose low to the ground. Cole followed, flashlight in hand, sweeping the beam across boxes and dust. He grabbed a broom and started clearing a path, hoping to salvage at least one usable workbench. That's when he heard it. A soft scrape. Then another. Not random. Intentional. He turned. Ranger was pawing at a section of floor near the back wall. Not aggressively, methodically. Focused. Quiet. As if trying not to wake something. "What the hell is it this time?" Cole muttered, setting the broom aside. He crouched next to the dog and brushed the dust away with his hand. The cement floor was uneven, but here, right where Ranger was pointing his nose, one of the old linoleum tiles was discolored, slightly lifted at one corner. Cole wedged a screwdriver under it and pried. The tile popped free with a brittle crack. Beneath it was not concrete. It was metal. A square panel, flush with the floor with a recessed handle and a serial number etched along the edge. Faint but legible. U.S. Property, 01Q7. Cold crept up Cole's spine like a slow tide. He stood, backed away instinctively. "That's a military cache cover," he said aloud. But who was he even talking to? Ranger sat, tail flat, head cocked slightly, watching. Cole's pulse pounded. His father had never served, or at least never said he did. He was a desk man, ran the station like a prison camp, lived by routines, kept his past behind locked doors. But this was something else entirely. He returned with a crowbar and a flashlight. The metal gave with effort, hinges groaning softly as the hatch lifted open. Dust bloomed from below. He coughed, shone the light into the void. It wasn't deep, maybe 5 feet down, just enough space for a narrow crawl space lined with plywood. And at the center, resting on a wooden plank, was a box. An olive-drab, military-issued footlocker. Cole climbed down carefully, the soles of his boots echoing faintly on the wood. The air was dry, stale, but not suffocating. He crouched next to the locker. It was locked with a thick padlock, old but solid, the kind that doesn't give without a fight, or the right key. He ran his fingers across the top, initials scratched faintly into the surface. GG. Not his father's. Not his own. Cole hauled the locker out and hoisted it back up to the surface. Ranger had not moved. As Cole emerged, brushing dust off his arms, the dog took one slow step closer. Not toward the box, toward Cole. "You knew this was here," Cole whispered, voice tight. Ranger didn't flinch, just sat, like he'd been waiting for someone to open that floor for a long, long time. Cole set the box on the workbench and exhaled. It was heavy, solid, full of answers or ghosts, or both. He didn't try to force the lock that night. Instead, he poured a cup of instant coffee, sat on the back steps, and stared at the horizon as the last light faded from the sky. Behind him, the dog stood in the doorway, silent, still, a silhouette against the dying light. Neither of them slept much. They were both waiting for something, and the box between them was about to change everything. The footlocker sat on the workbench like a sealed vault from another life. Green paint chipped but intact, the metal surface cool to the touch. Cole stared at it for a long time, his breath fogging slightly in the chilly air of the back room. Ranger was beside him, lying down but fully alert, ears tilted just enough to catch every sound. His eyes were fixed on the box, not blinking. Cole tried the padlock again, just in case. No give. He'd seen these before. Military grade, weatherproof, designed to last through hell and back. Breaking it open would take tools he didn't have, and noise he didn't want. So he waited. 2 days passed. He worked around the station during daylight, cleared out shelves, replaced cracked bulbs, got the old pump lights to flicker again. Not because he cared about fixing the place. He just needed something to do while his brain wrestled with the box and whatever might be inside. At night, he kept the footlocker close, slept with it at the foot of his bed like a buried weapon not yet unearthed. On the 3rd morning, while rummaging through his father's old toolbox, Cole found something strange at the very bottom. A small rectangular tin wrapped in electrical tape. He peeled it open and found a leather pouch inside. Tucked within was a key. Not a normal key. The head was shaped like a cog, six-pronged, with a narrow, ridged shaft, heavy and cold like it had been custom-made. He knew instantly what it was for. He brought it to the footlocker, heart pounding. Ranger stood the moment he approached. Not startled, just ready. The key slid in smooth. Too smooth. Cole paused before turning it, as if crossing a line. Then, with a breath, he twisted. The lock popped open with a solid click. The metal lid creaked upward, its hinges stiff but functional. Dust swirled in the air as the inside revealed itself. On top, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a journal. Next to it, a folded map. Beneath that, several thick manila folders bound with rubber bands, each stamped with a faded red marking that chilled him. Classified. Cole reached in with slow hands, lifting the items one by one. The journal's leather was cracked, the pages yellowed but tightly packed with neat handwriting and rows of ciphered text. The map was hand-annotated, filled with markings and arrows, mostly centered in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, places his father had no business being. Unless... Cole didn't let the thought finish. He opened one of the folders. Inside were surveillance photos, high-altitude black and whites, grainy but clear. Buildings, vehicles, men in suits. One of the images showed a younger man, maybe late 20s, stepping out of a jet. Cole's breath caught. It was his brother, Warren. He flipped to the next page. Another photo, this time his sister Ellie, standing next to a man in uniform at an art gala. Red ink circled the badge on the man's chest. Cole closed the folder. His heart was thudding like a war drum. He looked at Ranger. The dog was watching him with a stare so direct, it felt like confrontation, like a challenge. "You knew," Cole said, voice barely audible. This wasn't just inheritance. This was a goddamn mission. He picked up the journal and opened it to the first page. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. Coordinates, dates, ciphered messages. It read like an intel report written by someone who had lived in shadows and knew what shadows could do. His father, Harold Granger, was not just the bitter man who ran a forgotten gas station and judged Cole for every misstep. He was a Cold War logistics operative, and he had been watching his own children. Cole took the map and journal to the back office and cleared a space on the old desk. He opened the notebook flat, grabbed a pencil, and began sketching out the first cipher block. It wasn't easy, but it felt familiar. He had broken field codes in Afghanistan. This wasn't new ground. It was just buried deep. By nightfall, he had unlocked part of the first sequence, enough to piece together a sentence. Warren may have compromised the Dutch channel. Ellie possibly laundering via gallery front. Cole sat back, stomach turning. His siblings weren't just rich. They were connected to something else, something dirty, something dangerous. The journal entries grew darker the further he read. Mentions of weapons procurement, insider contacts, intel theft. There were names attached. Some he recognized from headlines. Others he didn't, but the notation beside them read, "Confirmed or watch list." This wasn't paranoia. It was methodical, clinical, true. His father had been building a case, and now Cole had inherited all of it. Suddenly the silence around him shifted. He turned. Ranger was no longer by the window. The dog had moved to the doorway, posture stiff, head high. Listening. Cole stood slowly, followed Ranger's gaze to the shadows outside. No sound, no movement. But something was out there, watching, waiting. Cole reached under the desk and pulled out the old hunting rifle he had found behind the counter. He loaded it with shaking hands and clicked the safety off. He didn't know who was out there, or what they were after. But he knew one thing for damn sure now. His father hadn't trusted anyone but Ranger. and Ranger had just passed that trust to him. Cole was halfway through decoding another journal entry when Ranger moved. It wasn't random, not a shift in position or a stretch. It was intentional, precise. The dog stood, ears pivoting, and padded silently out of the office without a glance back. Cole stared after him for a moment, then rose and followed. Ranger led him through the store, past shelves of expired gum and rusted cans, to the back wall of the garage. He paused at a metal junction box mounted near the ground, one Cole hadn't paid much attention to. It looked like a forgotten utility panel, all dust and dead switches. But Ranger didn't see junk. He pressed his nose against one specific spot near the bottom, a small rusted bolt head in the center of a faded warning sticker. Cole squatted down beside him, squinting. "That's just a—" He stopped. It wasn't a bolt. It was a keyhole, hexagonal, precision cut, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. His breath caught. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the strange, gear-shaped key he'd used on the footlocker. He lined it up. Perfect match. The key slid in with a click so smooth it made the hairs on his arms rise. He paused, then turned it. There was a soft hiss, not mechanical but hydraulic, like a sealed chamber releasing pressure. The wall section groaned, then, almost silently, slid inward and to the side, revealing a hidden steel door with a glowing green light above it. Cole stared. "You've got to be kidding me." Ranger sat beside him, tail still, body calm, like he'd known all along. Cole stepped forward, hand hovering over the door. It opened automatically with a quiet whoosh of air. Behind it, an elevator waited. Sleek, industrial, immaculate. No dust, no rust, no age. This wasn't part of the gas station. This was something else entirely. He looked down at Ranger. The dog looked back, eyes unreadable. They stepped inside together. The door closed. The elevator moved without a sound. Cole didn't breathe. When the door opened again, it was like stepping into another world. The room was circular, pristine, and brightly lit. A low hum of servers filled the space like a heartbeat. Banks of computer screens lined one wall, dark but humming with latent power. On the opposite side, a glass case held sealed crates labeled with inventory tags and numbers. A digital console blinked softly at the center of a stainless steel desk. In the middle of it all, mounted on the wall, was a black screen. As Cole stepped closer, the screen flickered to life. His father's face appeared. Not younger, not older, just steady. Dressed in a plain black shirt, his expression was somber. He looked directly into the camera. "If you're seeing this," he said, "then you found it." Cole didn't move. "You found the key, the locker, and the vault. Which means one thing. You're the only one left I can trust." His father's voice was calm, direct, like a briefing. "This facility is designated Watchtower Base 9, established during the Cold War as a secure information relay for field assets embedded overseas. It operated under deep cover, beneath this very gas station. Because who would ever look twice at a place like this? Cole felt the floor tilt under him. His knees locked, forcing himself to stay upright. "You need to understand, Cole," the voice continued. "I wasn't just a bitter old man keeping to himself. I was watching, and what I saw broke me." The screen flickered. Documents flashed by, deeds, ledgers, offshore transfers, shipping manifests. Cole recognized names, company names tied to Warren's security tech firm, galleries linked to Ellie's art brokerage. They're involved in something bigger than greed. Weapons, laundering, trade deals disguised as art sales. Warren's tech is being sold to shell buyers with military-grade applications. Ellie moves the money through international galleries. They're not just rich, they're dangerous. Another screen lit up beside the main one. A figure appeared, masked, holding a weapon Cole had only ever seen in briefings labeled Top Secret. They're connected to arms deals fueling conflicts overseas. I've collected every document, every transfer. And it's all here, in this facility. In your hands now. Cole's throat tightened. He looked at Ranger. The dog didn't blink. His father wasn't done. I knew they would try to find this place after I died. That's why I left it to you. Not to punish you, not to fix what I did wrong as a father, but because you're the only one I ever saw fight for something beyond yourself. The screen dimmed. Then, just before fading to black, his father added quietly, "This place is yours now. So is everything in it, including the funds I protected from seizure. Total value, $180 million. Use it wisely. And watch your sick silence." Cole stood in the glow of monitors that now belonged to him. He couldn't move. He couldn't even think. $180 million. Evidence of international crimes. A Cold War-era command center beneath a rusted gas station. And he'd almost walked away from it all. Suddenly, every moment of his life snapped into alignment. His father's distance, the strange routines, the military rigidity he'd never explained. It all made sense now. Cole reached for the journal, flipped to a section he hadn't deciphered yet. Coordinates, names, timelines. It was a war plan. And now it was his. Behind him, Ranger exhaled softly, then stood and sat beside him. Not waiting for orders, waiting for him to become what he was always meant to be. Not just the son of a soldier, but the last man standing on the watchtower. And now the dogs of war were coming. The first sign came with the silence. Not the usual stillness of Wyoming highway. This was different, too quiet. No crickets, no owls, no passing trucks on the old highway. Just a hollow hush that made Cole sit up in bed like he'd heard a whisper meant only for him. Ranger was already standing at the window, rigid, alert. His ears twitched once, then again. His body vibrated with energy, like a coiled spring ready to snap. Cole reached for the sidearm he hadn't touched in years. Something in him, something long dormant, kicked awake. It wasn't fear. It was focus. Ranger's instincts weren't wrong. They never had been. He followed Ranger out the back door into the cool dark. The desert air pressed against his skin like a warning. Moonlight cast long shadows over the gas station, and the windswept gravel lot glistened faintly. Then Ranger moved. No bark, no snarl, just speed. A blur of tan and muscle streaked toward the row of rusted oil barrels lining the edge of the property. Cole sprinted after him, staying low. He didn't have to wait long. A muffled grunt tore through the night, followed by the unmistakable crash of bodies hitting metal. Cole rounded the corner, gun raised, just in time to see Ranger pinning a man to the dirt, teeth inches from his throat, eyes locked in that eerie, unflinching stare that only a combat dog could deliver. The man didn't dare move. Cole turned. A second shadow sprinted away toward the dark tree line. Cole took off after him, lungs burning, boots pounding gravel. The figure reached the fence, stumbled, tried to climb, and didn't make it. Cole slammed him down hard. The man twisted, threw a punch. Cole deflected it, landed one of his own, and cuffed him with the old steel restraints his father had kept under the register. Minutes later, the two men were zip-tied to a pair of metal chairs in the garage. Ranger paced like a sentry, every muscle poised. Cole searched the first man's backpack. No weapons, but a small grey case stood out. Inside, a tiny microphone, a transmitter, and a miniature thermal camera. Professional grade. Nothing a common thief would carry. Cole's hands moved faster now, cutting open seams in their jackets. Hidden pockets, burner phones. One of them still had a folded ID badge tucked behind a sweat-stained photograph. He flipped it open. The name jumped off the card like a slap to the face. Gideon Rook, former Army intelligence, now with a notorious private military contractor based out of Virginia, Black Talon Group. He turned to the other man. Ranger stood in front of him, staring. "Talk," Cole said. The man smirked. "We were just looking for scrap." "Try again." "I don't know what you think this place is, man." "We just—" Ranger lunged, jaws snapping inches from the man's thigh. He screamed, nearly tipped the chair. Cole didn't flinch. "Try again," he said softly. This time, the guy cracked. Okay. We were hired, all right? Just to observe. Monitor the property. Collect data. No contact by who?" A pause, a flicker of hesitation. Then, "Warren Granger." Cole went still. His older brother. The CEO of Sentinel Corps International. The very company their father had once admired, and later feared. The same man who had stood at their father's funeral and given a perfect eulogy, talking about legacy, honor, family. Now sending trained operatives to spy on his own blood. Cole backed away, heart pounding for a different reason now. He paced the garage, connecting dots he hadn't known were part of the same puzzle. Warren had resources, access, political cover. He could make people vanish without consequence. And if he knew Cole had found the bunker, if he even suspected what was hidden below, he wouldn't just send watchers next time, he'd send erasers. Cole looked at the men. "You were never supposed to be seen," he said, "but you were." He stepped outside and breathed deep. The cold air felt different now, thinner. Behind him, Ranger emerged from the shadows, silent as always, but his eyes met Cole's with a quiet weight. "You know what this means, don't you?" Cole nodded once. Ranger wasn't just a dog, he was a sentinel, a veteran. He hadn't just sensed danger, he had acted with the precision of a Tier 1 operator, without hesitation, without fear. He was more than instinct. He was memory, training, loyalty, everything Cole had once believed in and almost forgotten. That night, Cole didn't sleep. He fed Ranger by hand, then sat beside him in the dark, listening to the wind rattle the empty fuel signs and the distant thrum of a world that had no idea what was coming. The war had already begun, and his own brother had just fired the first shot. It was just past 4 a.m. when the knock came. Not a frantic pounding, but a single knock, sharp, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly how much noise was enough. Cole had barely closed his eyes after securing the property post attack. Ranger beat him to the door, already positioned, unmoving but ready. The knock came again. Cole unholstered his Glock, stepped forward, and cracked the door just wide enough to meet whoever thought it was smart to visit a guarded gas station in the dead of night. A woman stood on the threshold. 60-ish, white hair tied back in a tight braid, trench coat heavy with dust and old secrets. She didn't flinch when she saw the muzzle of his weapon. She simply said, "Blue ice burns clean." Cole froze. That code. His father used to whisper it when storms rolled in, and he didn't want to answer questions. "Who are you?" Cole asked. She didn't blink. "The last person your father trusted, and I came a long way to make sure you don't die stupid." Cole stepped back. She entered without waiting for permission. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't growl. He watched her like she belonged. And somehow, she did. The woman walked straight to the kitchen, sat down and pulled a small flash drive from inside her coat. "The truth lives here," she said, "and it's about to make your life a lot more dangerous." Cole stared at her. "I need a name." "Blake. Agent Evelyn Blake. Retired now, officially anyway. I ran joint shadow operations for the DIA. Your father answered to me, long before he wore that gas station apron." Cole sat, his hands tightening around the flash drive she slid toward him. "Why now?" Blake met his eyes. "Because your brother knows you found the bunker. And he's not going to stop. What you found down there, It's more than legacy. It's leverage. You're holding proof of illegal arms sales, shell companies, blood money laundered through real estate. That $180 million asset? It's not just money. It's a pipeline, and it's leaking. Cole leaned forward, rage rising. He tried to kill me. Blake didn't blink. He'll try again. Silence fell. Then Cole whispered, "You said my father trusted you. Why didn't he tell me about any of this?" "Because you weren't ready. Because he thought he could clean it up himself. Because he believed, foolishly, that blood still meant something." Cole looked at Ranger. The dog hadn't moved, but his ears were tilted, listening to every word. Blake followed his gaze. "He stayed with your father until the end, didn't he?" Cole nodded. "He's more than a dog," Blake said. "He's a witness." Cole frowned. "To what?" Blake took a breath. "To how far your brother was willing to go." She slid another folder across the table. Inside, photos, satellite imagery, names, reports, and one that made Cole's stomach turn. Sergeant Noah Peterson, his best friend, his teammate, his shadow in every deployment, dead 3 years now. Friendly fire, they said. Wrong place, wrong time, until now. Cole's eyes scanned the classified report. Logistics trail, shipment number, arms traced back to a private contractor. The very same that bought up the surplus from Sentinel Corps' Black Budget Division. A trail of fake invoices, and a signature at the bottom of the page. Warren Granger. Cole stood up fast, chair scraping hard. He killed Noah. Blake's voice was even, not with his hands. But yes, the weapons your brother's company moved, illegal, unregistered, diverted to conflict zones, one of them found its way into the ambush that took your friend's life. It was meant for others, but your unit got caught in the crossfire. Cole stared at the page. The air felt like acid in his lungs. "You knew this," he said. "I suspected. Now you know. That means you decide what happens next." Outside, the wind picked up. Ranger let out a low growl, then stood and moved towards the door. Blake watched him. He senses things before we do. Your father once told me, that dog sees lies before they're spoken. Cole closed the folder, shoved it into the fireproof box under the counter. So what now? Blake stood. Now we burn the lies down, but we don't do it alone. You're helping me? No, she said. I'm helping your father finish what he started. But make no mistake, this isn't justice yet. This is war. Ranger barked once, sharp, urgent. Cole looked outside. A black SUV had parked across the road, headlights off. We have company. Blake smiled without humor. Then let's begin. Cole knew something was wrong before he even opened his eyes. It was too quiet. No soft padding of paws, no sound of claws against the tile floor, no heavy breath at his bedside like every morning since the storm. He called once, then again. Nothing. Then came the sound. A low buzz. His burner phone, the one no one was supposed to have the number to. He picked it up. A voice, mechanically disguised, cold and direct. We have the dog. Bring the journal. You have 3 hours. Cole's chest tightened. If you want him back breathing. The voice continued. Come to the old mill off Route 7. Come alone. Click. The line went dead. Cole didn't move. Not for a full minute. Then he threw the phone across the room and let the rage surge through his veins. They had taken Ranger. Not just a dog. Not just a companion. The last piece of loyalty in a world that had forgotten how to keep its promises. Blake appeared in the doorway, already geared up. I heard, she said. Cole didn't look at her. He was pulling out the false panel behind the pantry, revealing his old go bag. It smelled like sand, sweat, and another lifetime. Did they say anything else? No, but they know I have the journal. That means they know everything. Blake nodded, grave. It's a trap. I know. You're going anyway. Cole zipped the bag shut. Damn right I am. He pulled the journal from the safe and slid it into a duplicate cover. The real one he sealed into a waterproof pouch and strapped it to his torso. Then came the steel implant. Tiny, barely larger than a pill, a tracker last used when he embedded with Tier 1 teams overseas. He slid it into the collar replica he'd made for Ranger once, for training drills. This time, he strapped it to his belt. They wouldn't track him. He'd track them. You'll need backup, Blake said. I'm the backup. You're not the same man who ran missions in Fallujah. Cole paused. I know. That guy didn't have anything to lose. The drive to the mill was long enough to think, and short enough that thinking hurt. Every memory with Ranger came rushing in, the first time they met. The way Ranger didn't bark, didn't wag, didn't flinch, just looked at him like he already knew who Cole was and what he carried. The nights they slept in the same dirt, bled under the same moonlight, chased the same ghosts. The wind howled outside the truck as he turned off the main road. The sawmill loomed like a skeleton against the darkening sky. Broken windows, sagging roof, the smell of wet rust and something fouler. Cole parked a quarter-mile out, walked the rest. He scanned the tree line. 3 figures, one with a long gun, another pacing near the doorway, and in the center of it all, tied, muzzled, blood on his flank, was Ranger. Cole's jaw clenched. They hadn't killed him. Not yet. He moved closer. The man at the door turned, masked, armed, standard private military gear, but not smart enough. Cole moved like wind between cracks, up the outer frame, through the broken skylight. Inside, the man pacing spoke into a radio. Target's near. I can feel it. Cole dropped silently behind a stack of timber. He could see Ranger now, and Ranger saw him. No bark, no sound, just a slow blink. The old signal. I see you. I'm holding. Cole nodded once, then acted. Smoke grenade first, the one with pepper dust. Screams erupted. Then came the silence that follows panic, the perfect opening. Cole slid behind the closest guard, dropped him with a triangle choke before the man could scream. Ranger snapped his restraints as Cole cut the last tie. Blood matted his fur, but the dog stood like a war hero. And then, out of the shadows, came the man who orchestrated it all. Warren Granger, no longer wearing the suit of a CEO, now dressed like the soldier he used to be, and the monster he had become. You brought it? He said. Cole tossed the fake journal. Warren caught it. You always were the sentimental one. He sneered, flipping it open. The moment his eyes hit the first page, a flash went off. Micro ink. Blinding light. Warren cursed and staggered, and Ranger moved, straight into the man's legs, knocking him down hard enough to crack ribs. Cole was on him before he could reach for his sidearm. Thought you could take what matters and get away with it? Cole hissed. Warren spat blood. He's just a dog. Cole's fist landed hard. Then again. Say it again. Warren didn't. Ranger stood beside him now, limping but proud. Blake's voice crackled through the hidden earpiece. Choppers in range. Extraction in 5, Cole cuffed Warren with his own zip ties, dragged him towards the mill doors. I'm not done yet, Cole muttered. Then he looked down at Ranger. You held on. The dog leaned his head gently against Cole's thigh, just for a moment. That was all the answer he needed. The wind howled through the broken ribs of the old sawmill as if the place itself remembered every betrayal ever made inside its walls. Cole stood near the rusted catwalk above the main floor, barely breathing. His eyes scanned the warehouse below, where 3 figures waited. One sat calmly on a folding chair, flipping through a leather journal. The others flanked him with rifles in hand. The man with the journal was his brother, Warren, and beside him, with arms folded, a calculated calm on her face, stood Ellie, his sister. Cole couldn't see Ranger, but he knew the dog was here. Somewhere behind the makeshift partition near the loading dock, he caught a glimpse of a cage. His chest tightened. They drugged him. Light tranquilizer if he was lucky. It bought them time, but not loyalty. Ranger didn't forget pain. Cole whispered into the hidden mic. Visual confirmed. 2 primaries. Packages secured in cage. Blake's voice came soft and controlled. Copy. Team in position. Wait for your mark. He didn't answer, because now Warren was talking. I always knew you were the weakest link. Warren called out into the dark. You could have been rich. Could have run this empire with me. Cole stepped into the pale light. No weapons in his hands. Nothing but the decoy journal under his arm. I didn't want the empire, he said, voice steady. Just the truth. Warren laughed, rising slowly. Truth. You think the truth makes you better than us? No, Cole said, walking forward. But it's the only thing that's still mine. He stopped 15 feet away and tossed the fake journal at Warren's feet. Warren didn't bend to pick it up. He motioned, and one of the guards moved to retrieve it. Ellie finally spoke. You don't have the guts, Cole. You never did. All that special ops training and you still came crawling home. Cole's eyes didn't leave her. Home? That's what you call this? You sold weapons that killed my best friend, Ellie. Shrugged. Collateral damage. You were always too emotional. And you were always too dead inside to see people as more than numbers, Cole said. At that moment, Ranger let out a muffled groan from the cage. Cole's hand twitched. Let him go. Warren smiled. You made your choice. You brought the journal. We hold up our end. He nodded to the guard near the cage, who unlocked the door. Ranger didn't move, still under the effects of the sedative. That was the moment. Cole blinked twice. In the rafters above, a tiny red light blinked in return. Go. The explosion wasn't lethal, just a tactical flashbang that dropped from the far vent, filling the room with blinding light and sound. Chaos, screams, shots fired into the empty corners of the mill. And then Blake's team came crashing through the side wall. Black uniforms, rifles raised, voices sharp and lethal. Federal agents, drop your weapons. Ellie reached for her gun. A round struck the ground an inch from her foot. She froze. Warren tried to run, didn't get far. A knee to the ribs dropped him before he hit the loading ramp. Cole didn't wait. He sprinted for the cage, heart pounding louder than the flashbang's echo. Ranger was groggy, eyes unfocused, but still trying to rise. Cole ripped open the cage. I've got you, buddy, he said, sliding his arms under the dog's chest. Ranger let out a soft whimper. Behind him, the firefight slowed. Shouts turned to commands. Agents moved like chess pieces locking down a board. Blake's voice rang out. 2 in custody. Room secure, Cole staggered backward with Ranger in his arms. The dog was heavier than he remembered. Or maybe Cole was just more tired than he admitted. He knelt beside a crate, laying Ranger down gently. The German shepherd's eyes met his. Still foggy, but aware. Still with him. You held on, Cole whispered. You always do. Blake appeared at his side, breath short. Her Kevlar was nicked. She'd taken her round to the vest. Warren's screaming for a lawyer, she said. Ellie's ice cold. Not even blinking. Cole didn't look up. Doesn't matter, he said. They don't run this anymore. Blake glanced down at Ranger. He gonna make it? Cole nodded. He's tougher than all of us. In the fading light, Ranger's paw twitched. Not in pain, but in recognition. He was coming back. And Cole, bloodied, empty-handed and free, knew something that he hadn't dared believe since Noah died. Even in the worst of traps, loyalty still finds a way out. The house Cole inherited sat silent for months after the arrests. It was big, built for show, not warmth. Marble floors, dark glass, high ceilings. Every time Cole walked its halls, he felt like a stranger in someone else's lie. So he sold it. He sold everything. The board seats, the family shares, even the Range Rover Warren had once called the symbol of legacy. He kept one thing, a patch of land on the edge of the town where he and Ranger used to run drills back when the dog was still sharp-eyed and bullet-fast. The kind of place that smelled like pine and sweat and possibility. A place that hadn't been poisoned by greed. That's where he built Ranger's Watch. It started with one cabin, just a bunk, a fenced field, and a training pen. But word spread fast. One guy from Cole's old unit showed up, limping from an IED blast in Kandahar. Then another, who hadn't spoken to anyone in months. Then a woman, former Air Force, who carried guilt like it was stitched into her skin. Cole met each one himself, never rushed them, never asked more than they could give. He let the dogs do the talking. Not just any dogs. Ranger had the final say. Every new canine was tested not on how high it could jump or how long it could track a scent, but how it sat beside pain, whether it looked away or stayed. The local press caught wind of it after a Vietnam vet named Hank left a note on the gate before dawn one morning. It read, "First night I've slept in 40 years. Tell the shepherd thank you by the 3rd month, donations started coming in." Blake pulled strings to get retired K9s from federal units reassigned here instead of being euthanized or forgotten. Some were scarred, some limped, some flinched at loud sounds. But all of them knew what it meant to stay with someone who'd given up. Cole stood in front of a small crowd at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new main building. Nothing fancy, just wood, stone, and steel. Honest things. Ranger lay beside him, graying now, slower but still alert. His ears twitched when a baby cried in the back row. His eyes scanned the tree line like it might still hide something dangerous. The mayor offered Cole a gold plaque. He refused. Instead, he cleared his throat, hand resting gently on Ranger's back. "I didn't start this to be some hero," he said. "I didn't do it to fix other people." A pause. "I did it because I was broken." Ranger didn't just pull me out of the fire once. He stayed. He stayed through the nights I couldn't breathe, through the guilt that never went away, through the rage I didn't know how to name. And that, more than any medal or therapy, was what saved me. He crouched beside the dog, brushing a leaf from the fur between his ears. Ranger's Watch isn't about making people better. It's about giving them someone who won't leave when they're at their worst. That's what he gave me. That's what we're going to give back behind him. The field held 10 veterans, each with a dog at their side. No uniforms, no salutes. Just hands on fur, eyes steadier than they'd been in years. Blake approached him after the speech. She wasn't in full suit this time, just jeans and a jacket. "You know," she said, "you could have run a company worth billions." Cole looked around, at the dogs, at the cabins, at the man in the wheelchair whose Labrador rested its head in his lap like it had known him forever. "I am," he said. That night, long after the crowd had gone, Cole sat on the front steps with Ranger. Stars flickered overhead. A breeze came off the trees and carried the soft barking of dogs at play. "You still watching, partner?" he asked softly. Ranger blinked once. No bark, just stayed. And that was enough. The old gas station was barely recognizable now. Where rust once ran like veins down corrugated metal walls, ivy climbed green and alive. The pump islands were gone, replaced by flower beds and benches made from reclaimed wood. Inside, the scent of motor oil had given way to fresh baked bread and coffee brewed slow in a steel percolator. Travelers came in dusty trucks and tired sedans, some just needing fuel for the road. Others needed something deeper, a place to rest, a reason to believe someone still cared. Above the door, carved into thick oak, was a sign that read, "Welcome to Ranger's Watch." For those who stayed, Cole stood at the edge of the lot, watching the sun melt into the horizon beyond the hills. His hands were in his pockets, fingers tracing the corner of a worn dog tag that never left his side. Ranger lay beside him, head on his paws, fur silvered with age but eyes still sharp, still listening. Not just for threats, but for hearts. Inside the main building, a little girl no older than 6 stepped away from her mother and knelt beside Ranger. She didn't speak at first, just looked at him like he was some ancient guardian carved out of stories. Then gently, she placed her tiny hand on his broad head. "You hear me, don't you?" she whispered. Ranger didn't bark, didn't move much, but his tail swept once across the floor, soft and certain. The girl smiled, a rare thing, her mother had told Cole. Since her father's last deployment, she hadn't said more than a few words at a time, but with Ranger she didn't have to. "He always does," Cole said, crouching beside her, "even when no one else does." A bell over the door jingled. A man in faded army green walked in, dragging a suitcase behind him. His gait said pain. His eyes said ghosts. But when he saw the dog, he paused. And then, without a word, he sat on the bench across from the counter. Ranger didn't move, just turned his head slightly, registering the weight of another broken soul entering the room. They'd get to him. In time. The staff knew. The dogs knew. Ranger always knew. Later that night, Cole walked the grounds. The gravel crunched beneath his boots. In the barn-turned shelter, 2 teenage boys tossed a ball between bunk beds, their laughter echoing in the rafters. Outside, 3 women sat in a circle under string lights, each with a dog resting at their feet. One of them, ex-Marine, had shaved her head last week, said she wanted to feel the wind again. Near the edge of the property stood a stone column. On it, etched into slate, was the Ranger's Watch motto. They don't just serve. They stay. Cole rested his hand on the stone. He thought about the years he almost didn't make it. The nights when his body was whole but his mind was breaking apart, shard by shard. He thought about how Ranger never flinched, never walked away. In a world full of leavers, the dog had stayed. He turned to the camera crew from the local news who had been shadowing him for a feature on veteran recovery. One of them asked if he had anything left to say. Cole looked out towards the twilight, where the mountains were blackening against the burnished sky. Ranger sat beside him, back straight, ears forward, a sentinel until the end. "What about you?" Cole said softly. "Has anyone, animal or human, ever stayed for you when no one else did?" The crew was silent. The camera kept rolling. As Cole stepped back inside, a boy with hearing aids hugged a shepherd mix near the fireplace. A woman in her 60s taught her service dog to nudge her hand whenever her breathing got too fast. And near the far wall, a plaque hung quietly, framed in oak. Ranger, K9, soldier, healer, friend. He never barked first, he just stayed. The wind picked up outside, brushing past the flagpole, fluttering the Ranger's Watch banner. And in that quiet space where warriors came not to forget, but to be heard, one old dog listened still. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever needed someone to stay, then consider supporting Ranger's Watch and other real-life heroes like him. Subscribe, share, and always remember, sometimes it takes 4 legs to help us stand again. Thank you for watching.